This is DeepSeek R1, currently #1 on the App Store, and I'm going to compare it against all the popular models, including o3-mini, o1, and Qwen 2.5 Max, and see how they all go when it comes to programming and web design. So let me explain how this will work. First, I've set up an account here on DeepSeek, which is running DeepSeek R1. I've got Qwen 2.5 Max running, and I've got ChatGPT o1 running. And last but not least, o3-mini. I'm going to use o3-mini High for these examples. Now, I have had some issues where DeepSeek has been offline. So in order to combat that, I've gone over here to Ollama and set up DeepSeek R1 with a local model of 14 billion parameters, which I've set up in a Docker container on Open Web UI. Finally, I've headed over to Wix Studio and I've set up a template website where I can plug different bits of code in and see how all of these models perform when I give them different tasks. For the first challenge, I've got a bit of code here and I've made a number of mistakes to it. It's both JavaScript and CSS. And so what I'm going to do is head over to DeepSeek, plug it in and ask it to see if it can identify the issues and fix them for me. I'm not going to provide any context clues. Hopefully it can do some chain of thought to figure out what these are. So here it's identified that the menu was spelled incorrectly, as well as the minimum width for my CSS being 200 EM when it should be 200 pixels. So it looks like it's figured those things out, and after 21 seconds of thought, it's come back with those two issues and given me some new code to replace it with. Heading over to Qwen 2.5 Max, let's try the same prompt. Now this is quite quick. It's immediately giving me responses. As you can see, it's identified the menu being incorrect and the EM issue, but it's gone even further. Here it actually tells me that the drop-down menu is visible on page load and should start off with a display none, which is pretty cool, as well as an event delegation issue. Then it's given me the updated code and it's looking a lot prettier and the response is much faster. So I'm going to have to say this is already the better response. But let's not forget about the big dog in the room, ChatGPT. Finally, let's give this a test and see how long it takes to think and give me an answer. Okay, so it took 12 seconds of thought, which is less than DeepSeek, but still not as quick as Qwen. It identified the menu and the styling, and that's mainly it, and gave me some code to fix that. Let's also check my locally hosted version of DeepSeek R1, 14 billion parameter on Ollama, and see how that goes. This one also only took a few seconds. It identified the menu and it didn't say anything about the CSS, which is interesting. Though if I scroll down here a little bit more, it did add a couple of other things that it recommends to fix, such as the drop-down menu position being offset by 10 pixels. Interesting. Now to test out o3-mini High. It took much less time for its reasoning, only 17 seconds. Its recommendations were just for the spelling mistake as well as the styling issue. Now to have a look at the results. I have this small scoring card and I want to give a grade to each one of these models to showcase more or less how they performed in this very first task, and we can add them up as we go through all the different types of tasks. So for the very first result, I'm going to give Qwen an A, and this is because it was extremely quick at the response. It was also very smart at providing me a lot of detail here. It gave me answers to problems I didn't even know existed and mistakes I made that I wasn't actually aware of, and it also fixed the ones that I kind of just threw out there. For DeepSeek and OpenAI, I'm going to give both of them a B. The main reason is that DeepSeek was kind of slow, which I assume is because it's very popular right now, so its servers might be getting hit a lot, but still it was a bit slow, and its answer was kind of shallow, only identifying the two main issues I had, but not going any further. The same with OpenAI. While it wasn't as slow as DeepSeek, it still gave me a shallow answer. Finally, the local version R1 here, which is 14 billion parameters, I'm going to give a C because while it was quick, it was missing some of the things that I throw in there, like a CSS mistake where I added in a EM value rather than a pixel value, whereas all of the other models picked up on that. My second test is a coding one, where I want to generate some code to create a custom mouse cursor when I hover over links. I've put together this prompt and I'm going to post it into DeepSeek to create a 50 pixel by 50 pixel teal mouse cursor when I hover over hyperlinks on my website. Here is the response, and it did about 58 seconds of thinking to produce some CSS as well as JavaScript to complete this response, which is meant to make a teal circle, and it's going to follow my mouse movements. Let's test this out. I'm gonna plug this code in and then let me head to the website. And here is my hyperlink. And if I mouse over it, you can see that I do have a teal circle. There's only one issue. It's that the pointer hasn't actually disappeared, which would have been nice. Now to try this prompt on Qwen 2.5 Max. It produced the result very quickly, so I'm going to test out this code to see how it actually works in production. I'll add it here to the script and go to the website and test it out, and it works perfectly. Now to test out ChatGPT. And after 38 seconds of thinking, it spit out this bit of code over here. It's generated an SVG and done this all in JavaScript as a function, and then it's going to append it. Here I'll paste it into my website, and this worked. It kind of is the best solution so far. I like the fact that it replaced the cursor not with just a circle, but with what looks like a triangle. At least it kind of looks like a cursor, and I have to give it props for that. What about my local hosted DeepSeek model? Well, it's thinking right now. Let's see what it comes up with. And here we go. We have our JavaScript function, which is inserting some CSS code. I've plugged the code in here, and this has failed. It's just highlighted the background of the A tag here for this hyperlink, and instead the cursor is more or less the same, no changes there. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to say that this local model of DeepSeek R1 just doesn't do the same as the more powerful models. Now to test out o3-mini High. It spent 29 seconds reasoning out this response. Time to try out this code. And the results speak for themselves. It was able to create the custom cursor that follows along with the mouse. The only issue is that it's just a square. Let's update the scoreboard. OpenAI definitely created the best solution here. While it wasn't as fast as Qwen, it still provided the smartest result, creating a custom SVG and replacing the mouse pointer. The next best was Qwen 2.5 Max. While it was incredibly quick, and it was actually able to perform the task as I requested, it still could have created something a little bit more complex, like OpenAI's solution with the SVG, but still performed significantly well. DeepSeek, unfortunately, didn't do as well as the other two. It was kind of slow, and when it came to providing the answer, it didn't actually replace the mouse pointer. And so you had an overlap of both the actual new mouse pointer as well as the old one at the same time. And DeepSeek R1 14 billion parameter failed even more, because not only did it miss the mark entirely, doing something completely different, but it actually didn't do it very quickly either. Now for a bit of fun. I'm going to see how they go for web design. I've got this design here and I've thrown in a number of mistakes. I wonder if you guys can spot them. I'm going to ask each model to see how it does in terms of identifying what these mistakes are and what it recommends to fix. I've uploaded it just over here on DeepSeek and given this prompt over here to ask it what are the recommendations. After 24 seconds of thought, it's come up with a few things. Firstly, it has picked up the typos I added in, which is great. Though generally it says that the website has poor visual hierarchy layout and that it is kind of like a template or a wireframe because it doesn't have anything engaging, more just placeholder statements. It has picked up on the poor spacing as well as the fonts and colors, which is great because the website, well, right now it just kind of looks like a mess. So overall, I'm pretty happy with what it's done, though I do think it could be more specific on the actual examples and recommendations. I'm not going to be able to test this with Qwen 2.5 Max because it doesn't currently support images, so I'm going to have to skip past that, while it can do image generation, which is good in its own way. How about ChatGPT? Well, O1 does let you upload files, so let's test this out. I do like that ChatGPT does give you a preview of the image itself, and let's see what it says. So it's picked up that the title doesn't work. It's also picked up that the contact you should probably be something like contact us, which is definitely much better. It's picked up that the visual hierarchy is incorrect, but it tells me why, where it, for example, tells me that the positioning and sizing in some of my content might not be great. It's also picked up that the colors aren't great either. So here it says I should have some brand colors, but generally hasn't picked up the fact that I use red in one of the sections. It says that the white space seems to not be aligned very well. So it looks like the design is floating or misaligned, and that is more or less true. Specifically, I've added in more line space over here between the title. So it's good that it's picked that up. I also like that it's picked up this is a testing hyperlink, and it is something that maybe shouldn't be there. And overall, I think it's picked up on quite a few of the elements, though none of them picked up that this image itself seemed to be out of position and that this text over here was red. It would have been nice if they could have identified this, but I don't think OpenAI models or any models are trained to be web designers, so already it's done a pretty good job at just, I suppose, the task at hand. Now to move on to the model over here, which is a DeepSeek's R1 14 billion model. I'll upload this image once more and see what it comes up. And while it's taken some time to think about different considerations, it hasn't really produced anything of substance. There are general dot points of what's normally good for a web design, but nothing specific to this design itself or its issues. And finally, for O3 and o3-mini High, these don't currently support images either, so I'm unable to test how they do in terms of web design. Now to the scoreboard. I think OpenAI definitely did the best job here. While it took an average amount of time, it provided the smartest types of answers, being able to identify specific things in the design that I could do to make it look better. In second place would be DeepSeek, which I think will get a B here. While it was a little bit slower and provided average results in terms of its recommendations, it did provide recommendations that were relevant to the design. Qwen unfortunately gets a no ranking here because it can't do anything, and the R1 model of DeepSeek at 14 billions needs a new category, which I'm gonna label as F. Unfortunately, I think it failed in this because not only did it not provide any real recommendations, but it's almost as if it didn't look at the design at all. Now let's tally this all up. I think OpenAI generally gets an A ranking here. It's done really good across the board. While Qwen has done a pretty significant job when it comes to coding tasks and general tasks, I'm going to give it a B, along with DeepSeek, which I think also gets a B. While DeepSeek might not be great at programming or design, it's generally good across the board, so I was pretty impressed with what it was able to do in terms of how much it's cost and how it's kind of free right now to be able to use. Finally, the local model of DeepSeek R1, the 14 billion parameter one, didn't do as well as I expected. Now, it could be because I'm just running the smaller model, and I might need to try larger models in the future, but for the time being, I'm going to give this an E ranking. And while I love the fact that you'll be able to run this open source with a model that can run offline, it does take significant hardware to be able to run good models, and it's important to test out on hardware that most people use. My takeaway from this is that the hype around DeepSeek might not be everything it's made out to be, though the results from Qwen 2.5 Max are definitely impressive when it comes to coding. If you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about things like web design or no code or even AI, I've put together a small course that covers all of that in the description below. It's also free, so definitely check that out. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.